Welcome to this explainer. Right now, when we watch a modern football match, we're not just watching 22 players running around a pitch. No, we're actually watching the culmination of decades, literally decades, of intense, obsessive data analysis, probability modeling, and crazy tactical evolution. But to really get how the beautiful game turned into a quantified science, we need to travel back to one specific day that honestly changed everything.
So picture this in your mind. It's the Olympia Stadium in Munich, June 25, 1988. The final of the European Championship, featuring the Netherlands taking on the Soviet Union. Now, this wasn't just your standard championship match. It was a seriously tense ideological battle, playing out right against the dying light of the Cold War. It was the absolute zenith of systemic football, a monumental collision to decide if the future of the sport belonged to free-flowing artists or meticulous engineers.
You see, this match was a literal philosophical war playing out on the grass. On one side, we've got Rinus Michels managing the Netherlands. His whole philosophy was born from Dutch total football, this beautiful idea that players were artists of space, molding the pitch through human will and creative expression. But on the other side, Valeriy Lobanovskyi managing the Soviet Union. He was actually a former thermal engineer, and to him, a football match was just a closed system of 22 elements. He used early computers and cybernetics to treat his players like dynamic variables. Basically, they were interchangeable cogs in a relentless, high-pressing machine.
And Lobanovskyi took this to the absolute extreme. Working out of a scientific lab in Kyiv, he operated by a super strict cybernetic algorithm. He calculated a highly specific mathematical threshold. If a team's error rate in key tactical moments stayed under 15 to 18%, they were mathematically unbeatable, period. He would literally push his players' heart rates to over 200 beats per minute in training just to ensure they could execute this flawlessly. He built a system perfectly designed to control space and probability.
But, as we know, sports aren't played on a spreadsheet. In the 54th minute, a moment of unquantifiable human magic totally broke the machine. Arnold Murn hits this looping speculative cross. The Soviet defenders, operating flawlessly within their probability-based zones, absolutely expected Dutch striker Marco van Basten to just control the ball. Instead, van Basten surrenders to pure instinct. He strikes the ball on the volley with impossible geometry, dipping it right into the far corner of the net. It was a mathematically impossible strike, a tiny fleck of dust that completely jammed the perfect Soviet machine. Rinus Michels even called it a goal more beautiful than the most ambitious script. The artists beat the engineers that day, but the war of football analytics, that was just getting started.
Section 1. Football's first data scientists. The roots of the beautiful game's analytical revolution. Let's dig in. To really understand how we got to that breathtaking moment in Munich, we need to trace who actually laid the foundation for this scientific revolution. Way before expected goals or iPads on the bench, pioneers were meticulously tracking the game by hand. It all kicked off in the 1950s with an accountant named Charles Reap. Imagine this, Reap sitting in the stands wearing a literal miner's helmet, just so he could illuminate his notepad to record every single match event in the dark. That early dedication evolved into Lobanovskyi's 1970s cybernetics, eventually exploding with the founding of Opta in 1996 and bringing us right up to the 2020s where artificial intelligence drives real-time modeling.
Let's zoom in on Charles Reap for a second. He spent an average of 80 hours analyzing his handwritten notes from just one 90-minute match. 80 hours. And from that monumental effort, he uncovered a groundbreaking stat. Roughly 80% of goals came from attacking sequences of 3 passes or fewer. He also proved that winning the ball closer to the opponent's goal massively increased your chances of scoring. Believe it or not, this one piece of data-driven analysis birthed the famous English long ball philosophy that completely dominated the sport for decades.
Moving on to Section 2. The pressing revolution, synthesizing art and science into modern tactics.
So, that massive clash of Dutch art and Soviet science back in '88, it forced an entirely new tactical synthesis. Managers realized that to dominate, you couldn't just pick art or science, you desperately needed both. Enter Arrigo Sacchi, a former shoe salesman who took over AC Milan and literally reframed football's fundamental question. Instead of asking, who is their best player, Sacchi started asking, where is the space? He brought in the Dutch stars from that '88 final, guys like Van Basten and Ruud Gullit, but forced them to play inside a super rigid, high-pressing Soviet-style structure. He famously demanded that the distance between his deepest defender and highest attacker never ever exceed 25 meters. He'd even run shadow play training sessions without a football to perfect their geographic discipline.
Now, this whole concept of spatial control was pushed to the absolute extreme by Ralph Rangnick. He's the guy who really popularized gate compressing. If you're not familiar, this means rather than retreating when the ball is lost, your team immediately swarms the opponent to win it right back. By demanding this insane attacking output and intense physicality, Rangnick didn't just win football matches. As a director, he used this unified, aggressive philosophy to help build an astonishing €1.2 billion empire across Red Bull's global network of clubs. It proved that a tactical philosophy can scale into a massive competitive advantage.
All right, Section 3, Video, Bielsa, and Spygate. The digital era democratizes football analysis. As early digital tracking software arrived, stuff like ProZone, that mapped player movements using stadium cameras, the big challenge shifted. It wasn't about a scarcity of data anymore. It was about an absolute avalanche of it. Analysts could suddenly watch thousands of data points right from their desks. And Marcelo Bielsa, he is the ultimate example of treating this data explosion like an art form. During his infamous Spygate presentation, Bielsa showed the world just how obsessively he prepares. He revealed he had exhaustively analyzed all 51 of his opponent's previous matches. He studied hundreds of hours of tape to tailor game plans that exploited exact, tiny weaknesses, like intentionally keeping a +1 advantage in defense and a -1 disadvantage in the forward press, just to manipulate how the other team built up their play.
Section 4, the modern big data era, quantifying the beautiful game.
This era brought a statistical revolution that essentially turned football into a moneyball sport. This really kicked into high gear around the founding of Opta in 1996. While video showed coaches what was happening, big data finally allowed them to quantify the likelihood of success. This is where expected goals, or XG, completely changed the game. Before XG, a team could take 20 terrible shots, score 0 goals, and people would just say they got unlucky. But XG cuts right through those misleading scorelines by assigning a mathematical probability to every single shot based on historical data. It entirely revamped tactical planning, showing teams exactly where the optimal shooting locations actually are.
And naturally, this flood of data led to incredible hyperspecialization. Analysts started crunching the numbers and realized dead ball situations were a massive, totally underexploited market. Take the Danish club FC Midtjylland, for example. They started treating set pieces like an American football playbook. They had 20 to 25 distinct, heavily rehearsed routines. And guess what? They scored a staggering 49% of their goals from dead ball situations during their title-winning 2014-15 season. That is almost half their goals. It completely sparked a wave of specialist coaches whose only job is to engineer advantages in those chaotic set-piece moments.
Then you have teams like Brentford, who take this philosophy to the absolute limit. Owned by a professional gambler, Brentford is proof that if you strictly adhere to data principles across every single operation, you can build an elite squad on just a fraction of a rival's budget. They aren't just looking at basic goals and assists. No, they are diving deep into progressive passes, XG performance, physical output, and they are even using AI-driven psychometric assessments to find undervalued players who perfectly fit their system. They are quite literally winning the game before a ball is even kicked.
Which brings us to Section 5, AI and Human Genius, the future of tactical analysis. We are truly standing at the final frontier here, where the barrier between offline analysis and live action is totally crumbling. We're moving away from spreadsheets analyzed days after a match and piping data directly to the dugout during the 90 minutes of play. The AI revolution is already happening, guys. Platforms are automatically tagging player actions, saving thousands of hours of manual labor. But the next step? It's fully predictive. As AI starts forecasting career trajectories and predicting injuries based on live physical output, teams are getting tactical adjustments sent directly to the bench in minutes. But you know, this creates a really fascinating paradox. If every club gets access to the exact same incredibly powerful AI modeling, could it lead to a homogenization where everyone just plays the exact same optimal way?
Bringing us full circle right back to Munich in 1988, we really have to wonder about the future. If Lobanovskyi's 18% rule was just the beginning, and today's AI algorithms can calculate the absolute optimal move for every single second of the match, is the sport becoming robotic? Does the future belong entirely to the perfect predictive machine, or is there still a place for the maverick coach and player who relies on that unquantifiable fleck of human magic? Marco van Basten proved that even the most perfect mathematical system can be completely shattered by a moment of pure irrational inspiration. So as we look at the data-saturated future of the beautiful game, what do you think will be the next variable that defies the algorithm?